Chapter 1. The ill-fated story of the main character Eiji begins 10 years after the end of the world. Chaos and devastation reigns around. In the midst of this confusion, the only thing missing was the attack of a demon of an incomprehensible nature and unknown power. Alas, the encounter with the terrible creature was rapidly approaching. In a matter of seconds, two pairs of furious eyes of the monster had already begun to greedily devour the man in a desire to tear apart the prey, and the open mouth of a wild black cat began to tear a backpack full of all sorts of good. By the way, very necessary. In an unsuccessful attempt to repel the demon's attack, the man decides to run. Only a terrible thing happens. His leg is abruptly overtaken and grabbed by the head of a poisonous snake, which turned out to be nothing more than the tail of a monster. The venomous sting penetrates deeply into the body of the young man. He falls wounded and broken, and the beast just grunts in response and spits out the stick that he was trying to defend himself with. The demon does not notice that a pointed knife that was attached to his weapon falls next to the enemy. For the man, it seemed that the situation was hopeless, but the place where the dagger fell was very close. Maybe this is a chance for salvation? Suddenly, he felt a desire to take revenge on the beast at the first opportunity. The attempt to reach the knife was unsuccessful. The monster got ahead of the young man and covered the weapon with its huge paw. The man did not even realize that this fight foreshadowed him. In an instant, the figure of a she-devil girl appeared in front of him, who at first could not even believe in her luck when faced with a being of human nature. She was absolutely delighted that finally she had the opportunity to feel a person touch the body of a living man, subdue him to herself. For a second, the thought crept into the demoness's head that perhaps she was still facing a demon, but a higher one. Once again, she slid over the man's body, trying to find any inconsistencies, and having made sure that she was really lucky to meet a man, decided to immediately conclude a contract with him by weaving their bodies together. She ordered the man to look into her eyes, hypnotizing him, and she was preparing to bring the planned thing to an end. The man didn't even know what the demon girl was up to. The thought slipped through his mind that she wanted to turn him into a monster. In an attempt to prevent the worst turn of events, the man even asked her about her insidious plans, to which the girl replied that in his situation, he was not given the right to choose. She boldly descended from the withers of the beast to the ground, slowly approached the wounded man, casually and forcefully pushed her foot into his shoulder, testing the effect of the snake's venom. When she was convinced that Eiji was already weak enough and would not be able to resist, she began to slowly turn him into her servant, saying in the process of sweet rapprochement that it is a great honor for a person. With her long and sharp tongue, the girl caressed the guy's lips, face, chest, going lower and lower. He struggled desperately, but he was too weak. The effect of the poison spread rapidly through his blood and began its paralyzing effect. The main part of the ritual unfolded. The girl sarcastically remarked that despite the general weakness, the guy as a man is absolutely ready to commit the main clause of the contract. Additionally, she was turned on by a sense of human fear. The demoness climbed on top of the young man and began the process of concluding a contract, enjoying every second of passion. She demanded the same from her partner, arguing that he had a rare opportunity to get an indescribable pleasure, possessing the body of a higher demon. Eiji resisted to the last, but the climax came. There was an exchange of energy, and the agreement entered into force. From that very moment, the demon girl became his mistress. Even after all, the man did not stop resisting the circumstances. He grabbed a knife that had fallen during the first fight with the beast, and with all his strength plunged it into the heart of his mistress. A black sticky liquid rapidly ran out of the wound. Her demonic blood splattered and was everywhere. In the end, the girl's lifeless body fell. The latest events took place near the Sekai shopping center. It was a long-abandoned building. Eiji dragged the demoness's body inside and stuffed it into an empty metal tank. Firmly hammering the lid of the container, the man cried bitterly. Through tears, he apologized to Tamaki, asked for the fact that, most likely, he would not be able to fulfill the promise given to her once. The tank with the demon girl's body was firmly packed and tightly tied to two metal piles driven into the ground. Only the thought that now he would not be able to protect Mio was deeply embedded in the man's head. Chapter 2. Let's go back to the background a little. The invasion of demons began immediately after the gates of Abaddon opened. This happened 10 years ago, with the appearance of a giant crevice in the heart of the Pacific Ocean. Various demonic beings came out of it. In just a week, spreading across the earth, they exterminated most of humanity. In order to somehow protect themselves and close Abaddon, People decided to use nuclear weapons. American warplanes were sent to attack, but they did not even get to the site of the strikes. On approach, the stormtroopers were shot down by the enemy. The demons have completely taken over the sky. Humanity still did not give up and made various attempts to resist. Unfortunately, all their efforts were unsuccessful, and as a result, the number of survivors numbered no more than 10% of the number that was before the fatal accident in the Pacific Ocean. The ground was littered with corpses and bones. Chaos and confusion reigned everywhere. Over time, the connection with the outside world disappeared. The internet network did not work. Radio and television stopped transmitting news. It has become simply impossible to find out the situation or at least some news happening in the world. People who survived the beginning of the end of the world and faced demons are still in fear of these bloodthirsty creatures. For the residents of a half-abandoned high-rise building, a new morning of another day has come. What it will bring, alas, no one knows. Edgy was already preparing an omelet when he heard the morning greeting of his still very sleepy daughter. Sending the baby to wash, brush her teeth, and put herself in order, the father pleased his daughter with the news that her favorite fried eggs were waiting for her for lunch. The girl was very happy and ran to the bathroom. Afterward, the father reminded his daughter not to forget to say hello to her mother. After completing all the procedures, Mio knelt at the table where there was a photo of her mother and wished her good morning. It has already become a habit. It has become a kind of tradition. But the minutes were running, the girl was in a hurry, and was getting ready in a hurry. Edgy made sure. Did his daughter take water, all the necessary things? Did she forget to go to the toilet? I gathered myself. He didn't even think about it, but Mia was very worried about her father, even more than for herself. Finally, he made sure that everything was securely closed, and the family left the apartment. It was only necessary to raise your eyes, and you could see how the sky is dissected by various demonic evil spirits. A gigantic fish was moving just above them, and it became interesting whether this fish is a monster and how dangerous is it. These creatures were moving so close, but there was no time to think, so the father and daughter, holding hands, went to meet the new day. On the way to kindergarten, Miu asked Iji how soon he would pick her up. The father replied that when the hands of the clock would look down. My daughter was quite satisfied with this answer. They reached the kindergarten, where they were met by the teacher and said hello. Iji thanked the woman for looking after his daughter so carefully, and she in turn wished the young father good luck and extra caution in his dangerous work. The man and his daughter said goodbye, and he promised her that if they met toy rabbits, he would definitely bring them home, which the girl was very happy about. In the plans of the search group where Iji worked, a detour of the Southern District and the shopping center was scheduled for that day. The commander immediately warned that no one should go alone. This attitude did not concern the guys from the squad as much as Iji himself. He was stubborn and fearless, and didn't want to take anyone as a couple. He was satisfied with independent outings, and he also took on all the risks. The commander desperately did not understand Iji's zeal. The daughter of the chief was also among the squad. She guessed the reasons for this behavior, and she constantly tried to calm her father, reminding him of the loss of his wife, explaining to him how hard the pain of loss is and how long the wounds of the soul heal. Eiji really understood that people with children could not live in every district. Quarrels with others were not necessary for him, as this could cause separation from his little Miu. He had no right to allow such a thing, and he did not want to. Dejected by his thoughts, he walked through the territory assigned to him until he reached an abandoned department store. Going inside and looking around, he was not even surprised that the shelves were empty. It would be strange if something valuable could be preserved. Suddenly, Eiji saw the door blocked from the inside and concluded that the room could still not be penetrated. He took out a crowbar and broke down the door. The picture I saw left much to be desired. A headless corpse was lying in a locked room, and all the walls and even the ceiling were littered with bloody footprints left by a mysterious beast. A terrible thought suddenly crept into Eiji's head. What if this? He didn't even have time to finally agree with his thought, as the demon rushed at him and joined the fight. Eiji struggled desperately and soon killed the monster, plunging a spear into the heart. There have been cases when a person made a contract with a demonic being, and then exactly a year later, he also became a demon. The agreement was so strong that no one could terminate it. No medicine helped. People who entered into an alliance with a higher demon became marked with a special mark. This was their common trait. Eiji looked around, found a decent supply of food, a keychain that would be a gift for Miu. But then again another thought took hold of his mind. He remembered that the mark people lose their minds and begin to hunt their fellow humans, killing them. But the worst thing is that family members can become the first victims of the hunter himself. Eiji thought about it. The mark on his chest reminded him that there was very little time left, and soon he himself would become such a monster. The man put the corpses together, washed off the dirt and blood. But he was still burdened with heavy thoughts. He only did not want to lose his only daughter. Chapter 3. A little background. After the incident, Eiji's wife began to rapidly teach her husband all questions about the house. She wanted to make it as easy as possible for him to take care of the child, the household, and the garden. Tamaki explained in detail to her husband how baby food is prepared, asked him to avoid adding flour and eggs so as not to cause allergies. Eiji was not only upset, but he was afraid that he wouldn't be able to remember everything. While the father was studying, the young mother constantly held little Mia in her arms and could not see enough and admire her. Time was running mercilessly, so she appreciated every second spent with her family. Tamaki often couldn't hold back her tears and during such moments, especially asked her husband to take care of their tiny daughter. Several years had passed since that incident. Miyu had already grown up and even asked for help when Eiji was cooking. The girl was offended that only a broom trusted her. She also wanted to help her father in the kitchen, and the man was worried that she wouldn't get burned or hurt. Miyu begged Dad, convincing him that she already knows how to do everything. Eiji did not agree with his daughter, but more and more often he thought that there was very little time left, and she needed to be taught everything for an independent life. Finally, the man decided and began to show his daughter how rice was being prepared. First, they washed him together. The father told Mia that the water after washing the rice can be left to rinse the vegetables. Such knowledge of the Pope surprised the little girl. They were important and useful, and besides, Miyu understood that her mother taught her father everything. The man was watching the girl from the side, and at these moments clearly understood what Tamaki felt, counting every second spent next to them at one time for such training. Meanwhile, Mia finished washing the rice, and Eiji returned to reality, showing how the cereal is being prepared next. He accompanied the whole process with reservations from useful tips, and the girl diligently memorized them. It so happened that Miyu was born in a turbulent time. She did not happen to know the period that was before the disaster. Tamaki died when the girl was still very tiny, because Miyu practically did not remember her. Their place of residence remained the only reminder of their mother. He was sure that the girl would not leave this house, even if she was despised by others. Eiji increasingly wondered what information to put into his daughter's mind, what to teach, what is most important to say. His time was running out. He was going to become a monster very soon. Suddenly, someone knocked on the door. As it turned out, it was a kindergarten teacher. Eiji opened the door and did not have time to ask what the woman had come for, as the guys from his squad grabbed and dragged him outside. Lifting the man's t-shirt, they found a demonic mark on his body. The commander immediately voiced his guesses regarding Eiji's lonely sorties. The man made an attempt to explain the real reason, which was the murder of his wife, but it was useless. People were afraid for their safety and therefore were merciless. They put all the blame on the demons. Eiji did not agree with their arguments, considering them to be the reason that his daughter was separated from her mother so early. A worried Miyu appeared from behind the door and began to wonder what was going on with her father. The man tried to calm his daughter and promised the commander not to make scenes in front of the girl. The teacher approached Eiji, and I apologized for my deception, said that Miyu would live in an orphanage from now on, and when a suitable family was found, she would be given to other parents. The man approached his daughter, knelt down and said, in general, it was about working in another city, about leaving for a while, that she would stay in kindergarten until his return. The girl was crying. She wondered when he would return. The only thing Eiji could say was a promise that he would definitely come back for her. Miyu believed her father. They loved each other very much. The moment of parting for two was very difficult. Chapter 4. The guys from the squad dragged and locked Eiji in the Sekai shopping center. As a man did not ask to be released, they did not even think of letting him go. The commander said that from now on, all those turned into demons will be locked in this room because it is impossible to escape from it. At parting, the boss threw him a knife as a sign of their past acquaintance. Eiji was very angry, offended, and promised to take revenge as soon as he broke free. The commander openly doubted his words and offered to wait for the first transformation. Eiji was left alone. Looking around, he saw a mountain of dead creatures. They were all decomposing. The stench was unreal. There was no desire to figure out whether this place was a cemetery for people who had received a demonic mark, or whether all the corpses found were dumped here. The simple thought of death was swarming with despair. In addition, there is a tank with the corpse of his so-called mistress. Eiji is completely drooping. The prospect of dying next to the demoness who turned him did not please the man in any way. He desperately wished he had drowned her pathetic body in some river. Looking further, Eiji felt the handle of the knife. At that very moment, he had a clear idea of why the weapon was thrown to him. The guys wanted him to kill himself. In any case, again, he was not given a choice. Moreover, neither water nor food was left for Eiji. Thought after thought attacked the man's head. For a moment, he imagined the last moments of his Tamaki's life and thought how painful her torment was. Memories from their life together flooded in. He remembered how his wife's transformation began. Tamaki undressed and showed how her always beautiful body was gradually covered with coarse scales. She wounded herself, tearing off the growths until they bled, but everything was unsuccessful. The crust was growing again. Tamaki was so afraid of losing her feminine appeal, slowly turning into a monster. She thought Eiji would stop loving her. In special moments of frustration, she even asked her husband to leave her. But a man was always ready to prove to his woman that he passionately and immensely loves her in any form and in any condition. He reminded the woman of her daughter, assuring her that she was needed not only by him but also by their child. After that, the couple passionately loved each other, giving themselves completely, without a trace. Each time their closeness was like the last for them. They gave themselves to each other to the last drop, so that after parting there would be nothing to regret. Eiji was so immersed in his memories that at some point he thought he saw his Tanaki. It was as if a naked young girl was kneeling against the wall. Eiji walked up to her and spoke. When the girl turned around, it turned out that she was already transformed. The reaction was swift, and a sharp claw passed under Eiji's eye. Blood began to flow. Still fueled by hope, the man called her by his wife's name. Yes, it turned out to be Tamaki, his native Tamaki. Only the woman could not immediately understand who was in front of her. Suddenly, I remembered again the last meeting with the guys from the squad, when his beloved was leaving. She stood in front of them with her hands tied and waited for her inevitable fate. To come to the people's court was her decision. He knew for sure that the woman's heart was breaking. She heard her beloved husband crying behind her to come back, and their tiny daughter is crying in his arms, but she didn't dare turn around. Tamaki's decision was both right and cruel at the same time. Otherwise, victims among the closest are inevitable. The woman could not allow this. The last words Eiji was able to say were a promise to take care of their little Miyu. Aoi did not want to let go of his wife, his beloved woman, the mother of their child. But 3 days passed unnoticed. All the forces were running out. Suddenly, Eiji imagined something. Brushing it off, he decided he was just hallucinating. But no, there was a distinct thud in the tank with the corpse. Suddenly, the man recognized the laughter and the voice of the demoness. Eiji was really scared, and the girl maliciously informed him that he did not even hope to get rid of her so quickly. All because from that cherished moment their lives are closely intertwined, not only spiritually but also physically. The demon girl shared another piece of news. As it turned out, a person cannot fatally strike higher demonic beings. Meanwhile, Miyu missed her father very much. It got to the point that she refused to eat. No matter how the teacher tried to persuade the girl, she was still grieving and constantly crying. She lived only in the hope that Dad had never deceived her, which meant that he would definitely come back for her. Chapter 5. Inexplicable events were clearly taking place in the mall. Eiji was completely confused. It turned out that the demon who turned him is still alive, and even trying to have a conversation with him. Moreover, she mocks him and asks him to forget his human nature. At some point, the demoness began to command, calling to come closer to her and look into her eyes. The demon girl was eager to subdue, and Eiji was infinitely angry with her, since she was the cause of his main loss in life. With insinuating words, the demoness began to convince the man of the opposite. She said it was his election to serve her, and on condition of his unconditional submission, he will receive absolute power over the beings of human nature. Her words angered Eiji more and more. The man decided to finish her off with a metal stake, but even here his attempt was unsuccessful. A snake jumped out of a small hole at the same second and tried in vain to grab the man with its poisonous thorns. Today, luck was on Eiji's side. At least for a split second, he thought so exactly. The demoness spoke again, and again stressed the fact of their inevitable connection to the end of existence, and also called for the release of his mistress at last. The girl did not have time to finish. as the metal pile again darted its tip towards her body. Eiji attacked. The demoness was dodging. The fight was fierce. Finally, the girl's patience broke. She got angry and declared their inseparable existence for the last time. It was easier for a man to die than to admit and accept all this. Finally, the girl said that it was worth waiting for the first transformation, and submission to her as a mistress in the future would not take long to wait. Meanwhile, she continued to beg him for her freedom from iron imprisonment. At some point, the man could not stand it and asked why she, having such strength, was still sitting in the tank. But the girl did not immediately find an answer, and so she smiled maliciously again and said that she, as a mistress, was especially pleased with submission and service. Eiji doubted the power of the supreme demon and decided to plug the lid with a cork, depriving the demoness of the slightest exit outside. At the last moment, the girl screamed that all her strength had gone into healing the wounds, and this was her first outing since the injury. Eiji fell silent. Sensing the weakness of the man, the demoness even promised to fulfill any of his wishes, if only there was at least this gap. The man's answer did not take long to wait. Eiji immediately demanded the termination of the contract, to which he received an unequivocal refusal. In return, the girl offered a choice: money, power, sex. But the man was adamant. Then the demoness went the other way and began to put pressure on his weak points. She said that his strength was running out. He had no water source and no food. She kept telling him how much he needed her help. But Eiji stood his ground. He didn't want this kind of life. I didn't want demonic monsters to spread across the earth. In such verbal skirmishes, their day ended. The next day began with the addition of a new demonic corpse. The latter were dumped through a special pipe. The girl, using her snakehead, again made her way through the narrow opening of the lid and reached for the fresh corpse. Before Eiji even noticed, the demoness had already bitten off a piece of meat from the corpse's body and started eating, saying that it was very tasty. She invited him to join the meal, but the man stubbornly refused. Eating dead meat was beyond his strength. For a demon girl, his behavior was incomprehensible. Moreover, he was on the verge of exhaustion and death. Eiji was sitting by the wall with his head down and just dropped questions. As long as the supreme demon was in front of him, he could ask her questions. For example, why do demonic creatures attack people and why do they turn them? Oddly enough, the girl answered. She explained that with the conversion of people into demons, their personal and general magical powers increase. Then Eiji asked how many people the demoness had killed personally. She was embarrassed and tried to evade the answer, justifying herself with personal reasons, hiding behind some of her own circumstances. And then the girl decided and admitted that meeting him was unusual for her. And if earlier she could restrain herself, then when she saw him, she lost all control over herself, and at the moment of their meeting, instincts controlled everything, no more. This news stunned Eiji. It turned out that he was the first man she turned. He couldn't believe that he had stumbled upon a flighty demon girl who was looking for special adventures. The conversation had exhausted him completely. The feeling of thirst was incredible. Eiji rolled to the floor in complete impotence. The situation was in the hands of the demoness. She immediately tried to use the incident for her own purposes. After waiting for the most convenient moment, when the man was as weak as possible, but still conscious, she told him the following news. The girl whispered that the process of turning a person into a demon could be accelerated. The blood of a higher demonic being helps in this as well as possible. Before she could finish her sentence, she was already piercing her tongue with a sharp claw. Opening Eiji's mouth, the demoness bent over him. Drop after drop of her demonic blood slowly fell into the man's mouth. The scariest thing was that the situation was inevitable and irreparable. Chapter 6. The demon girl continued to say that the more he drank her blood, the faster the conversion process would take place. And after that, his suffering will go away, and they will leave their place of imprisonment together, take revenge on the offenders. Blood was slowly trickling into Eiji's mouth. Suddenly, there was a noise. Another corpse was flying down the pipe. There had to be a corpse. A little girl fell out of the hole. When she fell, although she landed on the body of a snake belonging to a demon girl, she was badly hurt. Eiji got up and saw that it was his Mayu. First of all, the man tried to find out why the girl was in this place. But the baby burst into tears, not fully believing that she was finally seeing her own father. She cried harder and harder, through tears, asking why he didn't come home from work to pick her up. She thought that he had deceived her, and therefore decided to go in search of him on her own. Even Eiji couldn't hold back his tears. Hugging each other, they cried for a while. Suddenly, Mia remembered that she had brought rice balls in case she found her father, and he would be hungry. The girl took out a bundle of food and gave Eiji water. The man quenched his thirst and then attacked the rice. The demoness was angry about what was happening. She missed her opportunity again. After all, there was very little left before the transformation. Then the girl took one rice ball and took it to the demoness, assuming that she was hungry too. Eiji was very scared for his daughter and tried to protect her from danger. And then the demoness had a new plan. She decided to take Mia hostage and force the man to let her out of the tank. At that moment, Eiji gagged her with a rice ball. And oddly enough, the rice seemed incredibly delicious to the girl, and she swallowed it with pleasure. For a while, all attempts on her part stopped. The man again tried to find out from the girl how she got to this place. Mia said that she heard the conversation of his commander and understood from his words where he was. And then I found this pipe and it turned out to be here. Now Eiji has an idea of how to get out of the trap. The demoness had her own views on possible ways of liberation. Suddenly, a noise was heard. It was outside the building. Eiji thought for a moment that it was a helicopter. But the demon girl was familiar with the source of the sound. She said that some annoying bugs were making such a noise and encouraged that now their area would become another food base for these creatures. The guys from the squad also heard an incomprehensible noise and began to look out for where it was coming from. Suddenly, everyone saw a moving black cloud. And then the commander saw what exactly was approaching them. Their area was covered by a flock of stinging insects of demonic nature. The monster bees immediately went on the attack. The leader of the squad decided that the basement would be the safest place and tried to hide there. When he saw Eiji, he asked for help. Meanwhile, the attack continued. Insatiable insects stung and stung victim after victim. The goal of their main female was to create a large army of servants. The more she converted, the stronger her army became. Every man seduced by her went under her complete subordination. The queen of the pack was delighted with the work done. She decided to show the whole world the art of true love. Chapter 7. The pipe from which the corpses fell was closed from the inside, but demonic insects tried to get into the building. Eiji hid Mia behind him and prepared to repel the attack in case of penetration of these creatures. Suddenly, one insect made its way through the pipe. The girl, seeing the monster bee, was very scared. Eiji decided to attack the flying creature without delay. The demoness wanted to warn about the main danger coming from the bee, but did not have time. Events unfolded very quickly, and the demoness had to help the man. Releasing the snake's head, she grabbed the insect by the paw and ordered Eiji to finish off the monster. The man reacted without slowing down, piercing the creature through with a metal stake. It was difficult for Eiji to understand why the supreme demon had saved his life. Asking the question directly, he heard that the girl did not want to die in this place, in addition, to lose the only source of her magical power. She explained that Eiji had become a donor of her magical energy, so they could not be without each other in any way. A new monster bee flew up to the tank and began to make its way inside. The girl was afraid for her body and asked the man for help. But Eiji did not resist in any way that the demoness did not die. On the contrary, he wanted it. Eiji did not want to understand and recognize their direct relationship. But the girl once again declared that if she died, her servant would also die. This time the demoness was even more angry. But Eiji was also really angry. He grabbed her snake body and tried to crush her. The man doubted that there was no way to kill a demonic being of the highest rank. The girl screamed that she was telling the truth, and that only a demon could kill a demon, but not a human. Eiji doubted her words again. It seemed implausible to him that other demons were trying to kill their own. The demoness cringed. They tried to kill her too, and she herself wondered why other demonic creatures were hunting her. Eiji was puzzled by what he heard. Then the girl said that the higher demons came to this earth for a reason, and that everything has its own reason. She opened up and confessed her devotion to her people to the man at the time. But she paid a great price for her trust and service. She lost a significant resource of her magical powers and personal memories. What happened forced her to distance herself from other demons and live separately. Finally, Eiji began to understand a little the reason for her flighty behavior. Everything turned out to be extremely simple, and memory loss could be blamed for everything. The man voiced his conclusions, but the girl did not like Eiji's conclusions. Lowering her head, she frustratedly recognized herself as an outcast, emphasizing another similarity in their destinies. The man clearly did not expect such a turn in their conversation. Everything I heard looked like an unreal coincidence. Anyway, the annoying insects did not stop attacking the doors. Eiji understood that there was no time to lose, And even if he doesn't understand the essence of all these demons, he still has to do something to save them. Suddenly he asked the girl her name. Then he warned that if there were creatures similar to her, he would not be able to distinguish them. The answer for the man was a new surprise. As it turned out, all beings of the highest demonic nature are forbidden to give their name. For them, the most valuable information is their name and contract. Then Eiji decided to give her a name, Chemra. The demon girl was not against such treatment. She only demanded one mandatory detail, a trifle in the form of a small verbal addition, mistress, and maliciously noticed that this binding is always necessary, as an important component of the appeal. Eiji could not stand such mockery and decided to call her even simpler, namely an empty-headed Chemra, which I did not fail to inform you about. The girl was angrier than ever. But then the man gave his first and last name. His daughter also told him her name. To this gesture, the demoness, squinting, reacted with the decision to remember their pathetic human names. At that moment, a flock of monster bees knocked down the doors and made their way inside. There were a lot of them. Those present in the room were in great danger. The girl again asked to be released from the tank. While the man was thinking, the demoness screamed again that they would simply all die now. Then Eiji decided to offer the Chimera a deal. The first condition of the agreement was to reveal your name. The demoness was not satisfied with such a request. It was a very dangerous step. Then she asked Eiji to tell her his real name. The man was angry. Time passed in verbal sparring, although there wasn't any left at all. The girl decided and whispered her secret in Eiji's ear. The man grabbed a metal stake and quickly opened the lid of the tank. A powerful monster named Valifar has been freed. The man grabbed his daughter, pressed her to him, and tried to protect her. The bloodthirsty battle of monsters has begun. The girl was covering a man and his child with her body. After some of the insects were killed, it became more or less safe near the window. The demoness suggested that Eiji and Miyu run there, but the window was too high. At such a moment, it was the flying abilities of the demonic beast that were needed. But it was only in dreams, although, as it turned out, every demonic insect killed by Valifar gave her its magical powers. Another transformation began, and the beast began to grow wings. It remains to take off and escape. Chapter 8. The man and the girl grabbed the demon's fur tightly. The creature jumped up and, keeping its wings in the air, punched a hole in the window. The long-awaited freedom was approaching. When they were outside and safe, Eiji asked the girl how she managed to grow wings. The demoness explained that all demonic beings of the highest rank have unique abilities. Her personal skill is absorption. She explained that when fighting with other demons, devouring their bodies, she is able to grow these parts on herself. Such an ability of these creatures scared both the man and the girl very much. But the demoness only grinned at such a human reaction. Eiji decided to find a secluded place for himself and his daughter and hide there before the bees find them again. The girl followed them. On the way, they saw their settlement being destroyed by an army of insects. There were a lot of fresh corpses around. The picture was terrifying. Monster bees gathered people together, wrapped them in cocoons, and transported them to a common hive. Eiji tried his best to find a safe place for his daughter. He was afraid that if they were found, they would face the same fate. The man saw the suffering of other people but could not help everyone. Right now, the main thing for him was the safety of Miyu. Walking down the street, Eiji saw a fierce fight between his former commander and a killer bee. Next to him was a woman and a small child. The girl asked her father to protect at least these people. Eiji decided to help. Hiding Mia, he rushed into battle and immediately delivered a fatal blow to the monster's head. The commander couldn't believe he was seeing Eiji in front of him. Even more, he didn't want to believe that the man had become a servant of the monster standing behind him. But what he saw was too real. The commander had not yet had time to fully vent his emotions, as a big black paw laid him on his shoulder blades. Eiji tried to intervene, but the demoness didn't like his emotions very much. She wanted to finally deal with the one who annoyed her, and then Eiji said her name in a voice and ordered her to stop. In an instant, the demon girl felt that she was unable to move. Now the man guessed another pattern. It turned out that if a subordinate person wanted to order something to the demon who subdued him, he had to use the name of this supreme being. This information was kept secret, as it was too humiliating for demons to obey ordinary people. That's why they hid their real names so carefully. The demoness went to new tricks. She tried to remind Eiji that it was the leader of his squad who disconnected him from his daughter and locked him in the mall. Reminded him of revenge. But this is not how Eiji imagined the reckoning with his abusers. Eiji and Chimera were too different in their views on life, so it was difficult for them to understand each other. The attack of the monster bees continued. When they saw a person, they immediately attacked the victim. The daughter of the squad leader hid in one of the rooms of the trading premises and barricaded the door. She was very afraid of turning into a monster. Grabbing the wedding ring that hung on her pendant, she asked for help from her Hiroki. Suddenly, the girl heard a man's voice. At first, she couldn't even believe it was her Hiroki talking. She had long lost hope of seeing her beloved again. The girl threw herself into the arms of the guy and began to cry. The young man apologized for being away for so long, saying that he missed him very much, and she was so eager to find out where Hiroki had been missing for 6 months. A little later, she asked him about it, but the answer horrified the girl. The young man admitted that he had been with his queen all this time. Suddenly, Hiroki threw the girl on the floor and began to undress. He abruptly tore off her clothes, painfully squeezed her breasts, kissed her on the lips. She struggled desperately. The man said that he gave his dignity to the queen, and in return received a special gift that the girl will definitely appreciate. Hiroki took possession of the girl, passionately driving the sting into her body. Everything happened very quickly and rudely. The girl was crying and couldn't believe what had happened. Hiroki got up, cleaned himself up, and said a dry goodbye to her. He couldn't even remember the girl's exact name. The man pursued only one goal, to achieve the praise of his queen. Any means were used for this. He went out on the balcony to fly for a new prey, and suddenly noticed a human child. Hiroki knew that baby meat was especially tender and delicious, so he tried not to miss the opportunity to get it. Only this child turned out to be the hidden Miyu. After the fight with the insect, Eiji went to pick up his daughter and take her to a safe place. He called her, but she didn't answer. Behind one of the turns, the man found his daughter's backpack and her beret. Indescribable anger at demonic creatures covered Eiji, and he promised to destroy every monster. Chapter 9. Vélafar and Eiji waited until dark. The Demoness considered this time of day the best time to save the girl. The man prepared for the fight, and they went to look for a hive. When the insect base appeared in front of them, they were horrified. There was a huge gathering of demonic creatures here. To go into battle on your own with so many demons was tantamount to suicide. Any plan was doomed to failure. The Demoness refused to help Eiji, but the man did not lose his head and threatened her with another order. Eiji couldn't give up. He promised to always protect his daughter. Therefore, he had to save her this time at any cost. The man turned to the Demoness and sincerely asked for help, and in return offered his submission. The girl was alarmed by Eiji's behavior, especially the fact that he bowed his head in front of her, knowing her real name. She thought about it. Weighing all the pros and cons, the Demoness could not make up her mind completely. She was especially terrified by the prospect of meeting a higher demon who wanted her dead. And Vélafar decided to help the man only in case of a critical situation. But she refused to go straight to the demon lair. Eiji took offense at the girl and offered to just leave him to save his daughter alone if they were discovered before they found Mia. Then the man and the Demoness moved forward. Having reached the gates of the alley, the girl again offered to give up the unsuccessful idea and return to a safe place while there is still such an opportunity. But Eiji has already decided everything for himself. Every new step was filled with danger. The absence of bees alerted the man. He believed that insects should sleep at night. The place was too mysterious and resembled a maze with a number of passages. The man hurried the girl. He understood that they only had until dawn. The Demoness was very scared, but Eiji didn't pay attention to her fears and remarks. There was a noise. They looked around again and suddenly saw honeycombs filled with larval clutches from above. There were a whole lot of them. As it turned out, the insect base was arranged as follows. People captured by bees were placed in honey and were in it until they turned into demonic creatures. The supreme demon absorbed the magical energy of each victim at the same time. The girl could only imagine the strength of their leader. Suddenly they noticed that the larvae eyes had opened. An extremely incomprehensible situation was brewing. It was unclear why they had woken up. Suddenly the girl and Eiji heard the voice of the queen who greeted her guests. The bees immediately rushed into battle, and the man realized that the supreme demon of these monsters knew that they would come. The Chimera was confused and could not figure out what to do, run and escape, or it was useless to do something. Eiji demanded that the queen return his daughter, and she just admired his fearlessness. The guests had their hands tied and were put on their knees in front of the queen. Turning to the man, she noticed that she herself is a very large mother and understands parental feelings perfectly. She also said that their fate depends solely on Eiji's behavior. After that, the queen turned to the servant and ordered to bring the cocoon with Miyu to them and hang it in a prominent place. The man was madly afraid for his daughter, but the queen made a weak attempt to calm him down, sarcastically emphasizing that baby meat is especially tender and delicious. It was time to move on to the crucial issues of their meeting. The queen spoke to the demoness and asked about the purpose of her coming. To this question, the chimera gave a completely unexpected answer for Eiji. Without thinking twice, the girl said that she came with a bow and brought a man to her as a gift. The queen was quite satisfied with this answer. She loved flattery. In addition, she wanted to humiliate the demon girl in every possible way by pointing her to her place. Of course, the chimera had completely different thoughts in her head, but she was not in a position to say everything she was thinking about the killer queen. It made her sick even to think that they were both higher demons. And then the queen stretched out her lower paw on the girl's head, bowing her as low as possible to the floor, and threw a farewell phrase with the wish never to meet. Humiliated and angry, the chimera could only agree. The girl's hands were freed and escorted out of the throne room. She only managed to throw a couple of farewell phrases to Eiji with displeasure and left. But mentally, she asked the man to use her name, but he was silent. Eiji tried again to ask the queen for his daughter's freedom. He would do anything to keep Miyu safe. But the queen quickly stopped all his requests, making it clear that he had no rights. And then she noticed that she was in an excellent mood and was not ready to kill a brave and strong man of human nature. The queen wanted to turn Eiji into her servant, and in return offered freedom to Miyu. She passionately wanted to possess his body and soul. Eiji already understood the price he had to pay. In an instant, the man and the queen were on the soft bed of her chambers. One more moment and the woman was completely naked. The next few minutes dragged by slowly. The queen began to undress Eiji. When she saw his body, she couldn't stop looking at it. She wanted to enjoy it for a long time and slowly. The queen was experienced in love and asked for special caresses, warning that his daughter's life was at stake. Eiji had no choice but to submit and satisfy all her sexual desires. The man knew how to cope with the task well, and he succeeded. From pleasure, the queen began to ooze honey from her nipples. She invited the man to taste his sweetness, clinging to her naked breasts. Eiji did everything. Finally, she decided to try the taste of a man. This particular man, she started kissing him. But suddenly Eiji felt sick. His strength began to leave him. He even thought that the honey contained aphrodisiacs. But then the queen demanded the bulk of their intimacy. Eiji couldn't and didn't want to resist anymore. Everything happened quickly. The climax has come. Only now there are some strange feelings left. The queen thought about it. She should have felt the sign as evidence that a contract was being concluded between them. But it didn't happen. And then the queen had suspicions that he was already marked and had been imprisoned by another demon. She tore open his t-shirt and found the mark. Her guess was correct. This furiously angered the female. So no one has ever betrayed her trust. She considered herself disgraced and humiliated. Turning into a monster, she attacked the man. Eiji quickly took out a hidden knife and tried to stab it into the queen's heart. The blow was so strong that the blade broke in half. But the demon's skin didn't even burst. The queen became even more angry and sentenced them to death as food for her children. Eiji ran to save his daughter and tried his best to get Mia, but he couldn't. Suddenly, the snake's head grabbed the cocoon and bit it at the base. Maya was in the hands of a chimera. For a man, the behavior of a demon girl has become a complete mystery. He even asked her about the reasons for such an act, especially since no orders were received from him. To which the girl herself did not know the answer. I didn't know yet. Chapter 10. The chimera grabbed the cocoon with Miyu and tried to carry him to a safer place. But a whole army of monster bees attacked them and began to sting mercilessly. The queen flew up to the girl and grabbed her by the throat and stung her, injecting her poison, while saying that the poison this time is more perfect, and thanks to her death will be long and painful. The queen boasted that she was constantly working on her skill, mistress of poisons, and now she can produce the most sophisticated toxic mixtures for any situation. The girl fell and began to convulse, and the monster woman was only watching the effect of her poison. Soon, Eiji ran up to the girl. He picked her up and hugged her. He never heard the truthful answer as to why the chimera came back to help. As an explanation, a simple desire to spoil the life of the hated queen would do. Only here the forces turned out to be incommensurable. Eiji was puzzling over a way out of this situation, and then the thought came to him that there was only one way that would save their lives. It was to drink the demoness's blood and speed up the process of his conversion. The man was ready to take this desperate step. They were all in imminent danger of death anyway. Eiji hugged the Chimera and kissed her on the lips. The girl did not believe in what was happening. They both pleased and surprised. They kissed and he drank her blood. In those seconds, the process of Eiji's transformation began. Finally, the man turned into a monster. The girl was delighted with his greatness and strength. Immediately, a fight between the two demons began. The queen underestimated her opponent. Soon his fangs sank into her sting, and he pulled it out. The ruler of poisons in anger decided to use her main weapon and released her particularly deadly composition. A poisonous fog enveloped the entire room and slowly crept up to Eiji. The poison was so strong that it could dissolve even bones. One touch, one breath was enough. The queen was so clouded by revenge that she began to destroy the hive from the inside with her poison. Eiji tried to bring the Chimera and Mia outside, but it turned out that the girl was immobilized. Then the man grabbed the Chimera in his arms and threw it out of the alley with all his might. He only managed to ask her to take care of his girl. The poison started killing Eiji. The queen was surprised that the Chimera managed to escape again, even at such a price. After all, it was a shame for the higher demonic beings to receive such help from humans. The queen reminded the girl of their mission on this earth and continued to humiliate her. Of course, the woman did not realize that the Chimera, along with the magical power, had lost her memories. But the girl did not like to give up, and at one point stated that she and Eiji have a special connection, and he should not be underestimated, because he is a very strong opponent. The girl's words only made the queen laugh. Suddenly, on her hand, the monster woman noticed the destructive effect of her own poison. She couldn't believe what was happening. Eiji turned out to be alive and was coming to her, and she was poisoned. The man wrought the sting torn out the day before and ate it in front of the queen. At the same moment, the absorption process began. It turned out that Eiji not only inherited the Chimera skill, but also absorbed the special power of another higher demon. Even the queen herself did not expect this, and yet she decided to enter the last fight. They fought to the end, until the end of the queen. Now Eiji has become the lord of poisons. With the death of the queen, all her servants died. The hive was being destroyed to the ground. Chimera and Eiji were watching. Suddenly, the girl asked about the man's future plans, and Eiji was wondering a different question at that moment. He wondered how many more of these higher demons were still alive. The girl said she did not remember all the details of the fault. But if her memory does not change, then 72 such creatures came to Earth. From that moment on, Eiji decided to help the Chimera subdue all the higher ones until he finally turned into a monster. He suggested that only in this way can there be peace on Earth, where his daughter will live in safety. The girl laughed at the man's plans, but at the same time, she noticed one interesting feature. She definitely liked this man, and I even wanted to obey him. Suddenly, Mia woke up. The worst thing was that she overslept, but the girl hurried to tell the dream she had seen, where her dad and the Chimera were kissing. Chapter 11. Eiji and Mia were leaving their home forever. The girl understood that this was due to her father's illness, and I wanted them to find a good doctor faster and be able to return home again after my father's recovery. Neighbors and acquaintances from the area openly shunned them, even drove them away. As a result, they had to go outside the fence. This had its price. The father and daughter will not be able to return home anymore. The girl did not understand the complexity of the circumstances and thought that they were just going on a picnic. Step by step, father and daughter, holding hands, went into the unknown, and then on the way they met the Chimera again. The girl even managed to get bored. They continued their further journey together. Unfortunately, Eiji had an outdated map of the area, and they soon found themselves on destroyed roads. The man wanted to use the girl's flying abilities, but she reasonably refused. They had too little magical powers, and the attack of demons could be expected at any moment. Therefore, it was decided not to waste magical resources. In addition, Eiji was afraid that if he turned into a demon again, it was likely that he would never return to human form. And they went to look for a workaround, heading to the nearest settlement with people. Eiji hoped that there would still be a place where his daughter could live in safety. After a while, Mia got tired and couldn't walk anymore. Her father picked her up and carried her. There were about 5 hours left before the next halt. When it got dark, the man put up a tent, lit a fire, and they started cooking dinner. It should have turned out delicious rice balls. The Chimera remembered their taste and waited in anticipation for her portion, but the man said that their supplies were limited, and they would not be able to share their food with the demoness. The girl was indescribably upset. She wanted to at least smell the human delicacy. Only Miyu explained everything wrong again, and Eiji had to allocate a portion of food for the chimera. The demoness swallowed the offered dinner with great pleasure, and immediately decided to pay for the delicious food. With my body? For a minute, the man fell into a stupor from what he saw, and the girl continued her game. The enraged man attacked the chimera and promised that the next time for such behavior, he would not just close the barrel with her body, but roll up concrete, and then lower it into the depths of the sea. Night came. The girl was fast asleep. Eiji sat in the forest and thought about everything that had happened. He was haunted by the thought that he might not be able to control his strength next time. The chimera came up and tried to calm the man down, saying that his transformation was at an early stage. This meant that Eiji's powers could only manifest in a state of awakening. The man did not like that in this matter he could not do without outside help. On one hand, he understood the importance of the demon girl's support, but on the other hand, he could not accept the price he had to pay, and still will have to. But one thing he definitely decided that, regardless of likes and dislikes, he would definitely make a demon lord out of a chimera. The girl sat next to him and listened to him, and then kissed him. Eiji thought that the girl was eager for his new conversion, and she wanted intimacy with the servant in order to regain her magical powers, and the man succumbed. When they were making love, Eiji again felt a strong and strange decline in strength, but decided not to dwell on it. In the morning, they set off again. Miyu started to lag behind again, and then Eiji examined her legs. It turned out that the girl had blisters on all her fingers. The girl overcame the further path already in the arms of her father. At a certain part of the way, a mysterious archer began to watch the travelers from the wall. And at the most convenient moment for him, he fired an arrow at the chimera. Chapter 12. The arrow pierced the girl's back. She didn't kill her, as she was released by a human, but still it wasn't pleasant enough. Eiji looked around and saw where the archer was standing. The man tried to explain to the shooter that the chimera does not pose a danger to them, but on the contrary it is their ally. And the archer wanted to protect the father and child, so he shot at the demon. But the chimera didn't like Eiji's position at all. Pulling the arrow from her back, she decided to subdue another servant, and rushed in search of the shooter. Eiji tried to stop the demoness, but to no avail. The chimera immediately overtook the young man. But suddenly it turned out that it was just a teenage girl. The demoness had to say goodbye to the idea of transformation. And then she had another idea, to feast on tender and delicious young human meat. But Eiji paralyzed the chimera with another order, preventing her from getting even with the shooter who shot at her. The girl was offended, but the man tried to explain such behavior of people and their defensive reaction. While they were talking, the archer aimed another arrow at the demoness again and wanted to shoot. But the man and his daughter began to defend the chimera. After making sure that the demoness was not dangerous, the girl invited 3 travelers to her house. They exchanged news. Eiji told about the attack of demonic bees and said that now they are looking for a new shelter. The man's plans were to go to a settlement living in the 3rd district. The hostess of the house said that she used to live in that area, and there were a lot of people there. There were children of different ages. Eiji was both happy and worried. He was comforted by the thought that there was still a safe place to live, but he was afraid of the reaction of the locals. Meanwhile, the hostess of the house asked how the man was able to subdue the demonic creature. The chimera was angry at the girl's similar curiosity and began to threaten her. And then she made a confession that a special contract unites them with a man. Such a statement greatly puzzled the hostess of the house. Eiji decided to hit the road. There were several kilometers left to the destination. The only obstacle was the destroyed roads. The man did not know how to calculate the time to make it to midnight. At some point, the girl offered to spend the night with her, although, as it turned out, she was not the mistress of the house at all, but, like them, was just a guest. Eiji didn't want to stay, but for the sake of rest, Miyu decided to spend the night. The man volunteered to bring water into the house and began to ask about the fate of the girl. According to her, their family could not get along with the locals, and therefore they had to leave. Then she hurriedly took out sweets and began to treat Miyu with sweets. The girl shared with the chimera, and they both swallowed the treats with great pleasure. The demoness didn't even take off the wrapper. Night came. Chimera and Miyu were fast asleep. Eiji found a secluded spot on the street and sat down. Soon Akane appeared with 2 cups of hot drink. She started talking about demons again. She had a suspicion that the chimera was subordinate to the man and was not his ally in any way. The girl tried to find out all the information in a special way. She offered Eiji her body if he would share the secret. Akane began to undress, but suddenly the man noticed a demonic mark on her hand and traces of the beginning transformation. Then the girl shared with Eiji the reasons and the secret desire to take revenge on one higher demon. Chapter 13. Eiji started asking for details. It turned out that 4 months had passed since the appearance of the mark on Akane, and her hand was already completely covered with scales. The girl was surprised that the man was not horrified by what he heard and saw. And then Eiji showed her his mark. The man told a personal story and tried to explain why he accepted the transformation. After hearing that Eiji was fighting with a higher demon, the girl began to beg him to share his knowledge about the weaknesses of these creatures. Akane wanted revenge for the higher demon for the murder of her parents, for the demonic mark given to her. She was ready to make any sacrifice for the sake of paying the offender. The girl again began to offer herself in exchange for killing the demon. Eiji denied her intimacy and covered her naked body, and she didn't understand his reaction. After all, everything testified that the man has enough reasons to kill these creatures. But Akane did not know yet that with every high demon killed, all his servants also perish. Eiji hugged the girl and tried to comfort her. There was less and less time for each of them every day, and the chances of salvation did not appear. Echimera saw a solitary conversation between a man and a girl. Eiji began to ask about the supreme demon that marked Akane, but she promised them an early meeting, because he came to her every day at midnight. The man reacted very quickly, especially when he looked at his watch. The time of the demon's appearance was inexorably approaching. Eiji really understood what kind of trap they had fallen into, but it was already too late. Akane burst into tears and said that this was her last chance to defeat the monster, and that's why she decided to take such a desperate step. Eiji was lost in thought. He didn't know how to do the right thing. Wait for the demon to appear or attack first. In any case, the most important issue for him was the safety of his daughter, and he first of all ran to her. Eiji did not have time to reach the room where Miyu was resting, as he was grabbed by an unknown person by the throat on the way. As it turned out, it was the same supreme demon. The monster was interested in the appearance of an outsider man in the house of his fiancée, and he decided to immediately deal with the visitor. But Akane tried to stop the demon. The Supreme maliciously noticed that the girl managed to make him jealous. While their conversation was going on, Eiji was looking for an opportunity to destroy the demonic creature. He noticed many gaps in his defense and quickly thought of a way to defeat him. The man immediately rushed into battle with the demon. Akane only managed to shout at Eiji so that he wouldn't look into his eyes. But it was too late. The man was already immobilized, being under the influence of a special skill of a higher demon. Meanwhile, when the monster was focused on his new victim, Akane decided to take revenge on him. She pulled out a knife and tried to deliver a fatal blow, but her attempt failed. As it turned out, the demon can look in several directions at the same time, and therefore 2 people were already under his paralyzing and hypnotic gaze. The demon approached the girl, undressed her, and began to examine her. He liked the way she was turning. He devoured her with his eyes. He was especially turned on by Akane's attempt to arouse jealousy. Exclusively so, he explained her behavior. And in the end, he offered Eiji to watch how they would love each other now. The girl was crying, and he was roughly raping her. Akane could only quietly, through tears, ask for help again and again. Eiji was distraught by what he saw and ordered the Chimera to appear nearby. The Supreme Demon was very surprised by this behavior of the man and assumed that he too had already been marked. But his mistress did not take long to wait. Valifar, with all her strength, came to the rescue of the man. Chapter 14. Eiji immediately warned the Chimera about the features of this Supreme Demon. He needed his demoness in full combat readiness. They were going to defeat this lizard monster. The demon used his skill again, and he managed to paralyze the Chimera. Eiji was very angry that the girl did not listen to him and looked into the monster's eyes, but she didn't agree with his accusations. Meanwhile, the demon began to talk to her. He began to question and then reproach the Chimera for her choice and actions. Eiji, without wasting a minute, decided to attack the lizard despite its strength. He thought it would be easiest to deprive the monster of its lower limbs. It remained for a small matter, not to look the demon in the eye. Another fight began. The Supreme Demon noticed that Eiji was the first person who was able to prevent his blows and stand with him in battle for so long. The man confessed about a recent encounter with a similar creature and about the quick demise of that demonic spawn. The lizard immediately understood who he was talking about. His next bride disappeared the day before. The monster felt sorry for his servant, because he shared his power with everyone infected. Eiji didn't know about such a relationship. It turned out that during the conclusion of the contract, not only the seizure of magical power takes place, but power is distributed at the same time. Their battle continued. In a fit of anger, the lizard said that his forces could only be divided into 5. He was always careful, kept a balance in everything, carefully monitored every process in detail. And now he finds out that his bride is dying at the hands of a man. The monster grabbed Eiji and drove his tongue as deep as possible into his mouth, while restraining his movements. After a short time, the man came to his senses and asked about the reasons for such cruelty to his so-called fiancée, but did not receive an answer. The man understood Ikin's feelings very well. She and her family have endured a lot of suffering and pain when faced with demonic creatures. Only the lizard wasn't interested in people's feelings. At that moment, Ikin took aim and fired a new arrow at the monster. The girl analyzed the opponent's strength and realized that he could hypnotize only 2 at the same time. If there is a third, he is able to fight, and she decided to strike. The arrow released should have pierced the monster's body at the same moment. But it didn't happen. On approach, something intercepted the arrow. When Ikin turned around, she saw 3 demonic creatures lurking on the ceiling, and she was able to see that each of them had a look like the look of her abuser. The monsters, watching everything that was happening, defended their master at the crucial moment. Ikin saw the arrow she had shot stuck in the long tongue of one of the creatures. Then the Supreme Demon turned to the girl and introduced his 3 brides. Ikin was supposed to be the 5th of them to inherit the skill of shackling from her master. And then her abuser promised the girl that tomorrow he would return for her to conduct a special wedding ritual that accelerates her transformation. Because that's the only way she can become his full-fledged spouse. The Supreme Demon decided to postpone revenge for the 4th wife for later. Haste in such matters was not the best option, and he bowed out and left the meeting place. The other guests of the house were left in complete confusion. They did not understand the forces they faced and could not imagine a way out of the current situation. Chimera refused to help at all and decided it was better to sit in a secluded place. But Eiji again reminded them of their opponent's magical abilities. Ikin was crying helplessly. The man sincerely sympathized with the girl and only thought about ways to help her. The Chimera, realizing the hopelessness of the situation, appealed to Eiji's common sense in every possible way. She even decided to remind about Miyu, said that at this rate, the girl could soon become a complete orphan. But the man decided to fight to the end, for the sake of people, for the sake of his daughter's future. Then, Miyu woke up and saw Eiji getting ready to go somewhere again. The girl was very upset by this, but her father promised to come back to her tomorrow evening. The Chimera was furious with the man's behavior, and he no longer paid any attention to her objections. Meanwhile, the lizard, pleasured by his 3 wives, dreamed about how another wife would join him tomorrow. Chapter 15. The girl remembered how it all started, that first ill-fated meeting. Then the girl's parents were still alive and tried to stop the monster, protect their only child. But the lizard, dissatisfied with the reaction, killed them on the spot. Ikin did not stop crying about herself, about her powerlessness, about her dead parents. She still had no idea what the future held, but she was already infinitely afraid of it. Her transformation has almost taken place. At some point, Ikin thought about escaping again. There were no other options. She called Eiji and handed over the map of the demon's estate, and also asked her to destroy her abuser at any cost at the first opportunity. But the man was going to do it anyway. Eiji and the Chimera went in search of the lizard and soon found themselves near its shelter. It was a tunnel overgrown with greenery and moss. There was a lot of water inside. The Chimera refused to go forward because it was afraid of water. The man did not want to understand her fears, but still decided to somehow simplify the situation and offered the girl his hand. The Chimera grabbed onto Eiji with both hands and followed him step by step. The water was cold and unpleasant, and suddenly it seemed to the girl that something was clinging to her leg. She screamed in terror. Eiji tried to calm her down, but they were no longer alone. A lizard-like monster was looking at them. The man again reminded the Chimera that it is impossible to look into their demonic eyes. The girl tried not to move away from the man and hold on to his hand. But in an instant, the demoness was shackled at the feet by the monster's tail and was rapidly carried away in his direction. Eiji was left without the help of a Chimera. The situation was getting more heated by the minute. The lizard-like creature's tongues began attacking the man. At some point, Eiji was severely wounded in the leg. The chimera looked into the monster's eyes and was already under its full magical influence. The man was very upset by such carelessness of the girl, and the creature just grinned and invited Eiji to look at his face and into his eyes too. The spear tongues went on the attack again. The man fought back as best he could, while frantically sorting through the ways of at least some kind of attack from his side, as his strength was depleted and more injuries were added. Eiji understood that it was necessary to avoid direct eye contact, and he had the idea that if he illuminated the surrounding water with his flashlight, he would be able to see what was happening on its surface. The water will mirror not only what is happening, but also protect his eyes, hiding them from direct eye contact. The monster's attack continued. The man managed to grab one of the opponent's tongues, and he pulled it sharply. This allowed the chimera to be freed from the trap. The girl fell into the water and began to whimper, but Eiji didn't have time to listen to the daemoness complaints. Two more lizard-like creatures remained among their opponents. They had to be finally dealt with before the appearance of the Supreme Demon. Appearance of the Supreme Demon. Appearance of the Supreme Demon. Appearance